Running your own business can be lonely, finding reliable professionals difficult, and generating new business challenging, but not when you have a business network. NewGen Networking provides its members with new and exciting business opportunities, with the chance to build lasting relationships with vetted businesses who can act as your sales team and solve the issue of who to turn to in your hour of need. With a range of flexible and affordable solutions, NewGen apply tried and tested principles in a modern way to suit today's world. To find the right option for your business, visit newgen-networking.com or call 03333 600 680. NewGen Networking. New business, new contacts, a new generation of networking. You're listening to the NewGen podcast exclusively on the Pod Station. Here is an interview with one of our members from the Einstein Hub.
Welcome everyone to the first feature episode of the NewGen podcast. My name is Matt Pollard and my business is Funky Vibes Marketing. Joining me is my fellow co-host, Dave Forrest from Myriad Mortgages. How are we doing, Dave?
I'm very well, Mark. Are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much.
It's good to be back.
It is. It feels like it's been a while since we've done this. We've done it in a different guise before, but this is the first time in this format.
It certainly is. And, we're still doing it socially distanced, aren't we? We're still on Zoom.
Yeah, we're still on Tinterweb.
Yeah, but hopefully not too long and we'll be in a studio somewhere.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Now, if you've read the title, you will already know our special guest for today. And if you haven't read the title, then it must be very exciting for you. We have ourselves the feature business for this week. And I'll introduce him and then just explain a bit more about what it is that we try to achieve, both in terms of NewGen as a whole and these shows in particular, and then you'll get a bit of a better idea of where we're going with this particular episode in particular. So we have Gary Evans from Blue House Accounting. How are we doing, Gary?
Great, Mark. Nice to see you as well, Dave.
Good to see you, Gary. Yeah.
Gary's looking very excited, everyone, because he's recently invested in a brand new microphone, and it's all slick and black and very chic and sexy.
And I'm very jealous, so I'm off. I'll be on Amazon later.
Hope I sound good, because the bank account took a hit for this one.
Dave's got microphone envy.
I have. Amazon later. I'll be on there.
So just to explain a bit about NewGen. So NewGen is a networking group, brings together lots of individual businesses, and the theory behind the madness is that you work collectively together to hopefully generate and pass work between one another. So, for example, I might turn up to the meeting and ask for an introduction to a particular type of business. If there's 20 or 30 other people in that room, then the chances of those people potentially either coming across or knowing someone who I've asked for over the course of their day-to-day business dealings means that there's a better chance that they might be able to pass me some work off the back of it. And I obviously do likewise with those other members. So that's the theory behind the madness. We have an online group which Gary and Dave are both members of, which is called the Einstein Hub, and that meets over Zoom on a Tuesday evening from 7 o'clock, and that's every week. And there's also a Friday morning meeting which meets face to face, although at the moment we're doing it over Zoom because of this bloody pandemic. But it will be meeting face to face at Vauxhall Motors Sports Club. Is that in Ellesmere Port, Dave? It's kind of yeah, it is. We'll go with Ellesmere Port so we don't upset anyone.
Yeah. Ellesmere Port. Yeah.
And that starts at 10 o'clock, and finishes at 12:30, although the online version starts at 10 and finishes at 11:30. If you want to check those out, if you want to see who the members are, learn a bit more about them, if you visit the website, it's newgen-networking.com. If you go and check that out, you can find all the information. There's also an online booking system, so if you just want to book yourself a place, then you can do that. If you type in the code NewGen Podcast, then it will actually give you a free ticket to attend that event by virtue of the fact that you've listened to this podcast. And so we want to reward you for listening to my shenanigans and Dave's. We won't say Gary, because of course Gary's going to be full of the fountain of knowledge for the next half an hour or so. So yeah, and what we also hope to do is, with these episodes, we will interview our members who will give us a bit of a background. They'll flesh out more about what they do, who they are, where they came from, and provide some tips that might be useful to you as a business. So hopefully you might either be able to avoid some pitfalls, or you might spot an opportunity to do business with that member, or perhaps even use their services. So that's the theory behind it all. If you want to check us out on social media, we're on all of the platforms, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn. You can also catch this show on all of the major podcast platforms, so Apple, Google, Spotify. We even do it on YouTube, although we haven't yet stretched so far as to do the video visual. I'd have to clean my teeth, brush my hair and trim my beard for that, and I'm not there yet. I'm still in lockdown
You're not
mode.
ready yet, are you?
Yeah, I'm still in stretchy pants, Dave. So we'll leave that for now, but you can still check it out. And if you want to direct messages on those platforms, then you can do so. It's at Network NewGen. If you want to try and find us there, if you stick that in the search term, then we should pop up and you can give us a follow. So I think that's all the donkey work done, Dave. Would you like to do the introduction of our guest? Let's give him a nice big build-up, and then he can tell us the wonders of the world and solve all of our needs.
Yeah, I will. Hello, Gary. Good to see you.
Hello, Dave.
Yeah.
Slightly nervous after Mark's introduction there, saying I'm going to solve the problems of the world.
He's so professional, isn't he? He's so good at it. So so it's just a chance to get to know you, and get your business out there, and put a bit of a spotlight on you for half an hour. So tell us about you and your business and how you got started.
So my business, I'm a chartered accountant, and I've set up my own practice this year, actually. So a bit of background about myself: worked as a chartered accountant for about 6 years now. Before that, did a bit of work in the family business as an electrician, which seems to follow me around slightly, because I still do bits of that on the side as well. Been working for some large firms, mainly in Australia, which is probably another story in itself to talk through. And worked for a national firm over there for about 4 years called William Buck. And I like to call that my professional training ground, because it was the first real sort of accounting job that I had, and if I'm honest, probably one of the best, to be honest. So, well,
it's a nice place to do some training where you can go for a barbecue in the evening.
Yeah, that's it. So it was a lovely time over there, to be honest. Then I spent a bit of time at BDO, which are one of the big global players in the mid-tier market. I did about a year in Adelaide and then a year in Manchester and Liverpool as well before opening up my practice this year.
Right, okay, so you started up this year. What sort of prompted you to come back then from Australia? What was there something that prompted you to come back and start your business here, or
the
spiders? The smaller over here, aren't they?
I'm not quite scared of crocodile spiders or kangaroos, but no, the family is the short answer to that question.
Okay.
My immediate family, mum, dad, brother, sister, and myself went over in 2010, and then we came back in dribs and drabs. Mum, brother, and sister in 2014, dad in 2017, and eventually me towards the end of 2019. But yeah, I think it was more of a life decision to come back. I grew up with a small village in Rainford, just outside of St Helens. Grew up with cousins, went to the same school. They've all started to have children, and I would also like to sort of see them grow up and have my kids, which I don't have yet, but plan to, grow up with their kids. So it was more of a personal decision rather than a business decision to to move back.
Yeah.
But the plan to have a business has always been in the background, whether that would have been in Australia if plans would have worked out differently, or here in the UK now that I'm back here. So
it was just the time was right to get back.
The time was right.
Time,
I like to say I did my professional apprenticeship over in Oz. Went to university, worked over there, did my chartered accountant studies as well. All that had sort of come to an end. I've been working for a while, and there was just something missing in personal side of life that I thought that I need to fill this gap if I want to be a bit happier longer term. And that's what prompted me to move back to the UK. So,
right. And is there any? I mean, obviously you did your qualifications in Australia. Is there any difference when you come back then? Does that change at all, or do you got to do any extra qualifications? Or?
Yeah, well, the fantastic thing about being a chartered accountant, it is a bit of a global passport in the fact that it's recognised, across the globe.
Okay.
In particular, though, there are, the international standards which we learn in Australia. There's also the tax laws are different between Australia and the UK, obviously. So that's a bit of study that I've been doing over here to bring my knowledge of the UK tax law up to date. But the CA badge is global, which is fantastic, and it's up to you to continue your sort of professional development and your CPD hours and training to make sure that you can apply the new knowledge that you learn.
Yeah, you just keep on top of things.
Yeah. What made you want to be an accountant, Gary? Did you just wake up one morning when all your mates wanted to be professional footballers? But did you wake up and go, no, I'm more an accountant?
Yeah. Well, football didn't work.
For none of us, no. Gary, you're not on your own there.
Don't worry.
We're all failed footballers at heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all pretended that we were probably better than we actually was, but anyway, footballing still happens at 5-a-side level. Used to be 11-a-side, but don't quite have the time for that at the moment. But funnily enough, I actually wanted to be an accountant quite early days. My dad had a business, which was quite a large business when I was growing up, and I actually vividly remember a memory in his car and him asking me what I wanted to do, and the answer was I'd like to be an accountant. Now, mainly was that the reason behind that was, they're the ones who have control of the money, know what's going on, know the inside thing. And his response was, please don't be a bleeping bean counter. But that's, that was then pushed aside. We went to Australia and I went through a period of not really knowing what to do. So with Dad on an electrical company, I decided to go to university and study electrical engineering. Now that was not the right choice for me. I ended up dropping out of that not once but twice on my pathway to working out what I wanted to do. And in the meantime, I ended up working on site for Dad's electrical firm, being sort of a trades assistant and passing electrician the tools and cabling and things like that. So yeah, after working with the electricians for a while and the company, the family business sort of getting a bit busier, I ended up moving into the office to do a bit of bookkeeping and paperwork. And the accountant at the time, who actually turned out to be quite a good friend of mine, her name was Kelly, used to come in once a week and teach me how to use the software. And then eventually, as I got a little bit better at that, it went to she'd come in every 2 weeks, and then every month, and then every quarter.
So you mean the friend you put out of work?
Yeah. But no, I used to watch what she did when she came in, and also just look at the sort of lifestyle that she had, and go into different businesses and talk to them about how they were doing, what they could do better. And it was quite interesting how much she could pick up just from looking at the numbers. And then being able to have a conversation about the business. So I sort of envied that lifestyle to a point and thought, oh God, how good would it be to go into these different, family-owned businesses and have a chat with them and see how they're going and, help them along their journey on the way to wherever they're going. So that was the sort of transition into accountancy. And this is how naive I was at the time. I actually Googled can you do accountancy at university? No, I don't know if I should actually tell that story too many times, but that's what I did. And then I ended up going to Adelaide University, and then from there just, got into, as I said before, got my first accountancy job, and then just went from there and went all the way through to become a chartered accountant.
Because it's not a short process, is it, becoming a chartered accountant? It's much the same as becoming a lawyer. You have your sort of university degree, but then there's sort of subsequent qualifications you need to get in addition. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in Australia, it was go to university, did an accounting and a corporate finance degree. And then from that, there's then 3 years professional studies on top of work, which is not the easiest to do. And I think there was 5 sort of 3-hour exams on top of that as well, to mix in. But I think in the UK, it's actually slightly different. You can do, you can go to college, do your AATs, and then once you finish at college, you can actually go and study to be a chartered accountant. Similar time, because you've got the time at college and then the time at your professional studies. But you can also do the pathway through university. I think it's just a way to, the 2 different options. Some people like to go to university. Some people prefer just to go straight into college. I'm probably slightly biased and say you should probably go to university because there's other benefits to that than just having a degree. Well, it's a bit like ripping a Band-Aid off. I wasn't a particularly enthusiastic academic person, but the idea of doing it part-time and doubling the period over which you've got to do it sounded way more painful than just getting in, getting it done, biting the bullet and getting out and doing the stuff that you're looking forwards to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you come back, you set up. Is it what sort of services you're offering then? What you're offering to businesses?
Yeah, well, the standard things that accountants do. So your corporation tax return for the businesses, preparing and lodging your accounts with Companies House, looking after any VAT returns that you need to do, CIS returns if you're in the construction industry, bookkeeping, payroll, the main, and also sort of monthly management accounts is the biggest service that I've been doing at the moment. And what that looks like is actually working with the business owners to achieve their goals, understand what they actually want from the business, where they're taking it. Are they planning to grow it in the next couple of years? Are they planning to wind down and liquidate the company and go into retirement? Are they planning to sell it? It's a personal question really on where people are taking the business. But if I'm working with them on a monthly basis, we can get to that point. So one of the things that I like to say is know where you're going, have a target to go towards. So
and do you think maybe because you've come from an environment where you worked as an accountant in a business, that gives you that more of view of a business rather than just an accountant who you see once a year and give them a load of paperwork? Is that
I think so. When I was in public practice, the graduates who would come through and I'd train up would come straight from university, straight into, preparing accounts and tax returns, and they wouldn't necessarily be able to physically see the business behind the numbers. They would just have numbers on the desk and they'd prepare the reports. Whereas sort of coming from the opposite way in the family business and seeing how not just the numbers, but the effect of, what's going on in the business, what it's like when you win a sale, what it's like when you lose a customer, what it's like when there's no cash in the bank and you need to pay for things. It's, seeing that, emotional element and that, that real life element behind the business was probably my advantage when I went into public practice, to see, to relate to the business owners who came in. And I think that's, a lot of the times why, I generally do develop really good relationships with the clients that I do have. It's because it's more of a personal nature rather than just I'll see you when I see you to lodge your accounts and your tax return, because you absolutely have to do that at the end of the year. It's rather we work together closely, and it's more of an advisor type relationship over the year, and we meet regularly, talk regularly, and it's almost like I'm an extension to your business rather than just somebody who does that tax return for you at the end of the year.
And I think you get a bit more, if you've got, so you get a bit more out, you get the sort of soft facts and a bit more about it rather than, as you say, once a year you just you file a return and that's it.
Yeah, well, as much as it's nice to sort of build relationships and talk, regularly to your clients, that there is that element of, if I know what's going to happen, it's a lot easier for me to do certain things, particularly with tax planning and things like that. Often what will happen is someone will come and say, oh, I've bought this new fancy car, or I've decided to invest in this new property. And they've just gone ahead and done it in the personal name and not thought about any tax consequences or what they could have done. Whereas if I know that that's on their mind and that's coming up, I can say, actually, what's your plan here? Yeah. Why are you buying that? What are you doing it for? Depending on how long they're holding it. And
I suppose it's promoting that with the business up front and saying, if you're going to do anything, just ring me first and have a chat and see how we do it. That's the way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So then we can plan, the structure of the way you should buy something, whether that be in your personal name or in your company name or in a trust name. It's important to know beforehand for tax planning purposes.
Is there a minimum size of business that warrants the need for an accountant? And by that I mean it's self-evident when you have bigger size businesses that are established and have a turnover and regular customers, but like one-man bands or relatively new startup businesses, at what point do you usually recommend that they need an accountant? Is it from day one? And if it is from day one, what are the benefits of them having an accountant from day one if, for example, they haven't yet got any clients or they're not turning over that much money? Or is there elements that people can try and do it themselves? And I ask all of those questions sort of knowing the answers, but to largely allow you to explain from your professional expertise as to why all of those things have a certain answer that's probably more sensible.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, and it's hard to draw a hard and fast line in terms of what is the point. It is good to start off with an accountant. The thing that puts people off is the fees, and that is understandable, depending on where they go and who they go to. But if you're setting up as a sole trader and just a one-man band, you can do that registration yourself. You can, then it's about how you're recording your income and expenses and what expenses are claimable. Now, if you have a bit of common sense and you jump onto the government website and you can see the things you can claim for and can't claim for, you can do a bit of that yourself. Chances are you will miss many deductions and possibly miss, what things you should be putting in as income and what shouldn't, and whether you should be VAT registered or not VAT registered. So it does. There is a bit of a rabbit hole which you can go down on them.
Well, VAT's a great example because the number of sole traders who aren't VAT registered because they don't want to have to go through that pain, but ignore the fact that whenever they buy the raw materials with which they do the work, they're actually paying VAT on that, and so they're almost paying tax that they could otherwise recoup.
Yeah, so I mean, to sort of round off your question, if you're a sole trader and you're quite knowledgeable, yes, you can do it yourself, but it's always worth, like, if you spent 30 minutes with myself, I'll be able to tell you what you can and can't claim for, what you should be keeping track of and how to keep track of it, whether it's, dare to say it, on an Excel spreadsheet or whether it's an actual accounting software. It depends on the size of your business. And if you're going to go into a limited company, I would definitely recommend an accountant setting the limited company up, and I would have an accountant from the get-go. Just be careful on the fees that people are going to charge for you. There's a lot of information out there, and how I tend to work it with startups is I will give you all the information and we will pick apart the parts that you can do yourself and the things that I need to do for you just to help you out. It's not about breaking the bank balance to get you set up and going. It's about understanding what parts you can do that's good for you to do so you can keep the costs down, and what things that I need to do to make sure that you looked after in the instance. And the very last thing on that is the decision whether to be a sole trader or a limited company is also a bit of tax advice. So that is something that you do want to sit down with an accountant on and say, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm expecting to earn. Should I set up a company or should I not?
You never want to do your own, but everyone potentially sets out thinking, I can keep on top of those receipts and I'll keep them all in a nice folder and I'll do this and I'll make that time and nobody ever does. Do they?
30th of January.
And it's always the job you hate most as well. So if you can put it off, you do put it off. But then when you put it off 2 weeks, it becomes twice the size of the job. So you think, well, I'll now need to put more time aside, so I'll do it next week. But that then becomes a 3-week job, and then it just escalates, doesn't it? And sometimes
and then you don't do anywhere.
Well, then you're not doing what your job are you, Dave? You're not building your business. The money you save.
As an owner managed sort of business, which is the businesses that I tend to work with, this owner operated and owner family owned type businesses, they often go into business because their speciality is whatever the operational side of that business is. So for instance, use your business as an example, Mark. You went into marketing and designing branding and websites and things like that because you are really great at branding and websites.
Oh my God, what an amazing plug, Gary. I'll send that $5 in the post.
But you may not be great at accounting.
Do you know what? I just hate it. There's no whether I'm good or not. I can actually, I'm not half bad at doing it. I just would sooner put my head in a boiling vat of oil.
Well, I can see what you think of me now.
No. I love accountants because it means I don't have to do those jobs.
Yeah.
There's jobs you like and jobs you don't like, and
exactly.
It beggars belief why you enjoy those jobs. But I'm glad that you're wired differently to me because I don't have to do those jobs.
Yeah, and I think it's not a question of accountant or marketing. It's a question of outsourcing. So what parts of your business do you need to outsource that you don't have the skills within the business to do? So if you don't have any accounting background or any marketing background, it makes sense for you to go out and employ a marketer or an accountant to do that job for you, whether that's on a part-time basis, on a contract basis, or on a yearly basis, whatever it is. Make sure that job is done. And if you haven't got the skills in-house, get it done outside.
It's also a cost analysis, I guess. You weigh up if you're spending 5 hours doing your bookkeeping every month. If you calculate what your hourly rate is and how much work you could get, billable work you could do, or how much business development you could do, as against what you could pay for someone else to do those. Not even 5 hours, because I suspect if it takes me 5 hours, it probably take you 1 hour. And so paying you for an hour means I've got 5 hours now to go and make some wonga doing the stuff I'm best at.
And it's also, Gary, like you said before, the pitfalls of getting it wrong. The potential cost of getting it wrong is not just on your business. It's cash, isn't it? You've got to pay the revenue cash if you get something wrong, if you make a mistake or you fall foul of the rules. So it's like anything, you've got to get it right.
Yeah, and I mean that's a really, really good point, to be honest, Dave. One of the examples springs to mind straight away was about 2 years ago. I was engaged to sell a business, and they had used a sort of a small accounting practice at the time, and they had used them because they wanted to keep the costs down, and they said we're not paying more than what we needed to, and that's what they got. Each year they got their accounts done, and they seen their accountant for about half an hour, and then 6 years later the business grew rapidly and they wanted to sell, and they ended up spending a lot of money with ourselves, which we estimated about they're probably 3 times as much as they'd already paid, whereas if they'd have been with someone like myself over that 6-year period, it wouldn't have been anywhere near the cost that it ended up being to do the due diligence and get the accounts right before the sale. So it is a cost benefit analysis. And to go back to Mark's point on the bookkeeping is quite cheap these days relative to what the business owner's value is, and people often do not value their time in the way that Mark was saying. Your time as a business owner is valuable.
Yes.
So if you are doing a bookkeeping type role for say 1 day of your week, you're essentially losing money if your value of your time per hour is more than that of a bookkeeper, which more often than not it will be.
So come on, Gary, give us some tips for the businesses out there listening in. Tell us what's the best things they can do. Give us. Have you got 3?
Yes, I'll go with 3. I actually wrote 3 down.
You can go with more if you want, if you're feeling brave, Gary. I'm sure when we're talking about the most common problems you come across with businesses, it probably stretched longer than 3.
Yes, it would. I've tried to be quite general as well on these tips, because it's hard to give someone a tip when obviously you don't know what industry they're in and what they're looking for. But a generic one, which I had as number 3, but I'm going to start off with as number 1, is spend less than you earn and know where you're going. So important to know exactly where you want to go. You know, if you're earning a steady income and that's what you're happy with, stay with that steady income, because that's what makes you happy. If you're looking to grow the business by times 10 over the next 5 years, go with it, but know that that decision changes how you spend your money in the background. And the spend less than you earn is quite self-evident. Be very careful about your cash balance in the business.
Well, you say that, Gary, but I guess that comes down to monitoring the figures, doesn't it? Running the reports. People might not have any understanding of what their monthly outgoings are to know that they're actually overspending.
Yes, yeah. That is often the case when I start to work with people, that they'll have, you know, a P&L and they'll say, you know, this is what profit I earned this year. And I'll say, okay, where's the, you know, and they ask, where's the cash? And I'm like, you know, profit doesn't equal cash. It is probably what a lot of people have already heard, but they don't monitor their cash position on a monthly basis, which is so important to do. I think the second tip, which kind of goes hand in hand with that, is know your numbers and have good monthly processes for bookkeeping and recording transactions. So I can give you great advice if I've got the numbers and data in front of me. If I don't have that good data in front of me, it's very hard to make good business decisions. So having a good, you know, monthly process for recording all your transactions, recording what's going on in the business, and recording good data. Good data in equals, you know, good advice out, basically. So know your numbers and have good processes, and use up-to-date technology to do it as well. Like, there's some fantastic softwares out there now. You know, Receipt Bank, HubDoc, Xero are ones that I use a lot to record, you know, data with, and, you know, the artificial intelligence within them softwares now is unbelievable. You'd be so surprised at how many hours you can now cut down bookkeeping from today versus 5 and 10 years ago. It's just incredible how far them softwares has come along. So
it's about working harder, not working smarter, not harder. That's the one.
Yeah,
you can work harder than smarter. That's probably me.
Yeah. We've been trying that for about 10 years.
Yeah, now. We recommend the other option.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is that's a good one. And the last tip I had was you know, build a good team of trusted advisors around you. Being a business owner is often, you know, they say it's quite lonely at the top. I think that statement comes from, you know, business owners, when they've got staff, they generally can't talk about some of the other things of the business with staff for obvious reasons. So you need a good team around you of external advisors, whether that's accountants like myself, some good lawyers, good HR advisors, and good marketers. Any skills that you don't have within that business, you need outside counsel from. So
and you don't necessarily need to have all of those, can you? No. If you get for example, a good accountant like yourself will quite often have contacts who fill some of those other areas by default. And I think that's something that's really important. When I set up my first business, the accountant I was given was recommended through someone, like through a friend of my other half's, and they were woeful. I mean, after 8 months, I had to spend the best part of $3,000 to undo and redo all of the work that had already been billed for them to do in the first time round. It was just absolutely mental. Now, had I have had a better network when I first went into business, I could have avoided that straight off, because I could have got a good accountant, or I might have had a good insurance broker who knew a good accountant. I didn't have any of those contacts. I was quite literally fumbling around. It was almost like this shows my age, Dave. You flick the yellow pages, stick a stick a pin in it, and that's the person you're going to use.
Well, I think we're putting a very plug in there for having a good old network. I wonder where there's one of those.
I was going to suggest that, actually, Dave. One of the
how did that crop up?
I don't know.
Honestly,
where did that come from? Isn't there one out there called NewGen? I think there's one there with all those services involved.
Yeah, what I was actually going to say about NewGen was that NewGen has actually been really fantastic for me in the setting up of the business. Obviously, I've got UMark doing my branding and website, which is not yet complete. So if anyone sees the website before the end of this podcast,
still looks sexy. We're getting there, aren't we?
Give us an extra 2
still
minutes.
All right. Yeah.
Another, I mean, I guess this is probably a more of a plug for my business, but that concept of knowing, that you have good people around you is one that I've probably taken from the first business I worked for, which was William Buck, which I mentioned before. Now, they used to have wealth advisors, mortgage brokers, tax planners, business advisors, and insurance as well. I've actually set up, arrangements and, referral agreements and partnerships with other businesses for mortgage broking, for insurances for the business, and also for financial advisors and IFAs and things like that, because it's so important not just to think about the tax consequence of business, but make sure you're protected legally with insurance, and all of the compliance type activities are the boxes checked off that you're safe on, so that you can carry on and do the operational side of your business and go ahead with it. But to get them, trusted advisors is obviously part of a network that it comes from. So yeah, a good accountant should have all of them.
And of course you do.
I do.
Dave, have you got any more questions for Gary?
Yeah, just one last question, Gary. What's the most common problems you come across with any size of business? What's the most common problem?
Bin bags full of receipts.
Yeah, I don't like receipts. I'm not going to lie. You need to keep them, but there's better ways of doing it. Common problems. Number one would be cash flow, and number two would be people. So, making sure you know your numbers, know what cash you've got coming in, what's going out, and knowing where you're at. You don't want to be in a position where obviously you're in the negative.
So cash is king. That is the thing, isn't it? Cash is king.
Yeah.
I think we've all learned that this year as well. A lot more.
Particularly cash flow is king. I like to say cash flow rather than just cash. This is general advice, because sometimes there might be a startup business that's actually borrowed money to get going, or they've had a investment from elsewhere, so that the start of their business, maybe that first year, they are in the negative because they're investing in the research and developing. But at some point in the next stage of business, you have to get that return back, and that's the bit that people don't focus on the most at times. So it's important that one, you are cash flow positive, and two, you're keeping track of it so you can pay your bills on time, and also make sure that you actually receive the money that you've invoiced out. The amount of businesses that don't get paid from bad debts is phenomenal, and they forget about it as well, which is crazy.
That's why it's helpful having been a former lawyer. I have my abilities to squeeze the right people at the right times if there's any such nonsense going around. Then people tend to pay up when I start to go all lawyery.
Yeah, I think the second thing I mentioned there was people issues and leading and managing people. So that's a whole skill in itself, which I often say that a business is constrained by the owner of that business. So the better leader that person can be, the better they can be in their technical excellence of what they do, the more chance they've got of being successful. So a good HR advisor is imperative, and learning how to lead people and get the best out of people, and make it enjoyable as well. We do this for fun as well as for money. I do anyway. So
I'm sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face when you just described accountancy as fun.
How can people get hold of you, Gary? What's the best way to get hold of you?
Pick up the phone. My number is on the website, and also all details are on here. Mobile or office number is fine, and I'm also quite visible on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. So any of them options, or simply drop me an email.
Well, you can find all of Gary's contact details in the show notes. If you want to meet Gary, I say in person, obviously in a virtual sense, why not come down to the Einstein Hub on a Tuesday night, 7:30, and at 7 o'clock even, at 7 o'clock, so you can have a chat with him. If you're especially nice, we can make sure that you go in a little breakout room with him and you can pick his brain to death.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And also for any of the listeners, I'm more than happy to do a free introductory call and spend 45 minutes with yourself, learning about you, what you do, and your business as well, and see if we can help each other out.
And in terms of fees, Gary, I presume that's all very subjective, isn't it, to the businesses? Do you do those in lump sum fees? Do you spread them over the course of a year? Do you help them plan? How does that all work?
Yeah, I like to stick to fixed fees, so fixed monthly fees, particularly for the the annual services of accounts, tax returns. They're a yearly fee, but I will split them over each month of the year. For the monthly services like bookkeeping and management accounts, obviously it'll be a monthly fee anyway. But I'm very open and transparent on fees. I will always give you a cost beforehand, usually split across on a monthly basis. If it's a one-off project, we will try and quote that as is, but leaving some flexibility if there's needed for whatever reason. But yeah, mainly monthly fees and fixed fees.
Fantastic. Dave, have you got any more questions?
I think that's it.
We've done all right for our...
informed about accountancy now.
We are. We've done all right for our debut show. Gary, thank you very much for all your time.
Gary.
That's been really useful, very interesting. Get in touch with him, guys. Come and visit us, and then you can meet him in person. Go and check him out on his website. On what did you say, Facebook and LinkedIn, you say you were on?
Yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn. Website is www.bha.uk.com.
Fantastic. Brilliant. All right, well, we will catch you next time, guys, when we will have another member in the hot seat. They have some big shoes to fill after Gary, but I'm sure they can live up to that challenge. Dave, thank you as always, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. See you next time.
Gary, thank you very much. We'll see you again soon too.
Thanks, Bo. Thanks for having me.
See you, Gary.
Bye, guys.
If you would like to visit one of our online or face-to-face hubs, visit newgen-networking.com and book a place. Get social at Network NewGen on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn.